Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Shaw. I'm a Senior Technical Account Manager with Turbonomic. I'm also an Azure Certified Solutions Architect Expert. And today I'm going to talk to you about how to use Azure Policy to enforce compliance at scale. So the agenda for today, I'm going to show you how to create and configure Azure Log Analytics to collect memory metrics from VMs. So why do we do this? Is because by default, Azure only collects and shows CPU metrics. So the value, by collecting memory metrics, it enables you to see and take better scaling actions to help assure the application performance and unlock more efficiency. And then on top of that, we're going to create an Azure policy to enforce VMs to connect to that log analytics workspace. And why do we do that? That is used to enforce all new VMs to adhere to the policy, and also used to remediate existing VMs in your environment that do not adhere to that policy. And the value that brings, it helps you to enforce and remediate the policy at scale, which equals compliance and time savings for you. So a few details and limitations around Azure Log Analytics. A VM can only be connected to one Log Analytics workspace at a time. A VM must be powered on to connect it to the Log Analytics workspace. And if you have multiple Log Analytics workspace, you can configure each of them to collect memory metrics. From the Azure policy side, they can be scoped to and enforced at the management group level, subscription, or resource group level. And only one Log Analytics workspace can be configured in a policy. Now on to the demo. So I'll show you. Now in the Azure portal, I'm going to go through creating a Log Analytics workspace. So I already have some pre-created here, but we'll just walk through how easy it is to create a Log Analytics workspace if you don't have one. So all you have to do is pick your resource group, pick a name, and pick a region. We go next, and there's only one pricing tier. We go next. You can apply any tags and values to those tags as you want. Review and create, and we create. And that's how quick and easy it is just to create a Log Analytics workspace. So it's essentially just creating that for you. There's nothing configured in it. So that'll just take a moment to deploy. And it's almost finished. And there we go. So now we'll go and look at the newly created workspace. And what we have to do first for the memory metrics perspective is we have to go to the agents configuration section. And then we go to the Windows performance counters. And we want to add a counter. So in here, we're looking for the memory available M bytes. And we add that for Windows. And we apply that. Then we go to the Linux performance counters. And again, for memory available M bytes. And we apply that configuration. So now the Log Analytics workspace is set up and configured for any VMs now that connect to it to automatically collect the memory metrics from those VMs. And I can show you here. So virtual machines, it shows you all the virtual machines currently in the subscription and which ones are, say, connected to an existing workspace or not connected to any workspace. And to show you one that's already connected to another workspace and how we cannot connect it to this one unless we first disconnect it. So that's that limitation of Azure only limits a VM to be connected to one Log Analytics workspace at a time. So you'd first have to disconnect and then reconnect it to a new one. So going back to the workspace, I can show you connecting a VM. It's as simple as clicking connect. I won't do that now because we're going to use the Azure policy to actually enforce and remediate the VM. So we don't have to go in here and individually click connect, all the different VMs in your environment. We can do that at scale using Azure policy. And one more area I will show you in here with one of my existing log analytics is what the memory metrics actually look like when they are collected from a VM. So when we go into one and we scroll down to the log section, and we can add a filter for resource type, virtual machines, and then we click virtual machines again on the left, and then we click under this virtual machine available memory. We click run, and what this does is it runs a query in the background against the workspace for the time range specified, which in our case is 24 hours, and it shows you for the VMs that are connected to this workspace all of the memory metrics that it's collected in the last 24 hours. So we can see the average utilization from a memory perspective of the VMs. So giving you that visibility that by default Azure does not give you, because by default they only collect CPU metrics. So now we can see the memory metrics on top of that. So now we will go into create an Azure policy. And in Azure Policy, we go to the definitions section. And in here, under search, we search for monitor. And what we're looking for is enable Azure Monitor for VMs. So the nice thing about this is Azure already has a built-in definition, or what they call an initiative, which is a collection of definitions that we can use for our policy. So when we click on it, we can see all the different policy definitions that are included in this initiative. So we can see we have policies for Windows VMs and Linux VMs. So the nice thing is this policy can be used to enforce for both the Windows and Linux VMs. We don't need two separate policies. We can use the one to cover both. So in here, we click Assign. And here's where we define the scope that we want to set this policy at. So in our case, I just have the subscription. But if you did have a management group, you could assign it to that. And then you could also, if you wanted to individually, say, assign it to just a specific resource group, you could do that as well within the subscription. So I'm just going to do it at the subscription level. And then the rest is we just leave the defaults, but you could say, add exclusions if you wanted to for some reason. You could add those. And we just make sure policy enforcement is enabled. And we go next. And here's where we have to specify the log analytics workspace that we want to enforce the policy. So this is for new VMs and to remediate existing VMs against. So we can, let's say, pick the new one that we created. And then we're not going to worry about any of the other options, but we'll go next. And here's where we can get into the remediation tasks. Right now, we won't go into that, but you could potentially say create a remediation task and say, I want to remediate all Linux VMs after the policy is created against this policy. So you could do that during the creation of it, or you can wait and remediate after the fact. So in our case, we'll do it after the fact. So we'll leave that unchecked. And here you can assign or define any non-compliance messages you want for the different policies, but we can just leave it as default. And we're finished, and we just say create. And there we go. So that has been completed. So now when we go back to policy and we go under the compliance section, we now see, I already had one in there from before. It was already showing non-compliant, but now we have a second one that we just created. And the compliance state always shows when you create it as not started. So it does take some time for Azure Policy in the background to actually scan the VMs in the environment for the compliance state. So that can take, depending on the size of your environment, it can take a significant amount of time potentially. But for a smaller environment, yeah, like mine, when I created this, I think it only took maybe 15, 20 minutes. So then and I'll show you the one I did create just to show you what it does look like from a compliance standpoint. So we can see the policies that are non-compliant and the VMs, the resources that are non-compliant with them, and the ones some that are compliant. So then what we can do is in here, we can say create remediation task. And when that loads, we can pick what policy we want to remediate. So say if it's a Windows VM, it will scan our subscription and it detects, oh, there's one, this Win machine is non-compliant. So we can now remediate this VM. And if you had multiple VMs, they would all show there as well. And you could select them all and say, okay, yeah, we want to remediate this. So we can go remediate. And now it's going to go in the background. And what it's going to do is deploy the required log analytics agents on those VMs for you, connect it to that log analytics workspace that was configured in the policy, and then automatically start collecting memory metrics. And another nice thing about the policy we touched on as well is when now any new VMs that are created in this subscription, they're automatically going to be adhered to the policy. So that means after creation, after they're powered on, after, say about 10, 15 minutes, you'll start seeing those agents being installed on the VM for the log analytics and then the memory metric collection automatically. You don't have to do anything. That policy takes care of it for you in the background. So now from a compliance level, you're able to quickly come in, review your compliance, and at scale, easily remediate any existing VMs, and also any new VMs are automatically adhered to that policy. And that's all I had for the demo. And just to conclude what I showed here, so we showed creating and configuring an Azure Log Analytics to collect memory metrics from the VMs connected. We were able to visualize the memory usage over time of the VMs connected to Log Analytics. We created an Azure policy to enforce new and remediate existing VMs to connect to Log Analytics at scale. And again, why did we do this? To help assure application performance and unlock more efficiency by enforcing policy compliance at scale. Thank you.